there are gaps appearing in AI adoption. It is mainly men who are using it. It's mainly white men too. It's mainly people like me, like I'm part of the problem here, are using generative AI a lot more than other groups. So there is a potential problem here where if AI is all we think it is, and it is going to allow this productivity to 10x to 100x, then if only certain people have or are using this technology, they are going to increase income gaps, they're going to increase societal gaps as well. So there is this question of how do we make sure that all groups are using it, and why are certain groups not using it, and is that a problem, and do we need to address this? There's a lot to unpack here, but I just want to give you the numbers. So women are 20% less likely to use generative AI than men. According to a new study, both at work and in everyday life, they account for 42% of global ChatGPT website users, 42.4% of Perplexity users, and 31% of Anthropic users. So that's interesting. So 70% of Anthropic users are male, 30% are female, and then 40% of ChatGPT are female, 60% are male, roughly. So there is a gender skew. We tend to see this with all new technologies. There tends to be a higher male adoption initially, followed, and then it levels out over time. So I think the internet is now 50-50, but at least initially it was not. It was very male driven at first. So the researchers from the Haas School of Business have analyzed data from 18 studies, so a meta study encompassing more than 140,000 individuals worldwide, and found that the gender gap persists in nearly all regions, sectors, and occupations. Across 12 studies, women had a 22% lower chance of using Gen AI than men. The study also took into account from SimilarWeb, which shows first-party analytics, which showed that only 27.2% of global ChatGPT app downloads are from women, and it's only 25% in the US. That's interesting. So people downloading the app version onto their telephone is 75% male in the US. I'm sure they had SimilarWeb. Public information is not very useful, but I'm sure they did some kind of control on that. So here we go, drivers behind women's lower adoption. So we can see a pattern, but that working out what the cause is difficult. We can generally see correlations, but finding the causation is difficult. The paper, though, highlights several drivers of the gender gap. Women report lower awareness of AI tools and less understanding of how to use them, particularly because they may work in roles less exposed to technology. Okay, so already roles like engineering skew heavily male. So roles in engineering, in a sector like engineering, because it is more male dominated and it's more exposed to AI, that would make sense that men are using AI more because there are more men in that field. That kind of makes sense. They also express less confidence when prompting chatbots and are less persistent when outputs are satisfactory. So this is an interesting one. There was a study in Denmark, and it was a long time ago. It's about a year ago. Let's see if they reference it. No, we've got the Kenya study. I don't see Denmark. They had a study in Denmark where they were already seeing this gap start to open up, the gender gap in the uses of artificial intelligence. And they started looking for why that is. The men and the women in these corporate settings, this is within a business, were given the same amount of training, but the women wanted more training. So that was one of the big challenges that was brought up in the Danish study, that everyone was given base training, but the women said, we want some more training, but it was not necessarily provided. Whereas it looked like, and this is relatively anecdotal, it looked like the men would be given the basic training, they're like, okay, and then they would just start, and they would start making mistakes and then learn their way around artificial intelligence, which is the way to do it, is just to start using it on a daily basis, make mistakes, realize how you can better use AI, and then go from there. It's not a technology that punishes mistakes. That if you're learning to code, for example, and you get something wrong in coding, then it won't work. But with artificial intelligence with generative AI and chatbots like ChatGPT, it's not a punitive technology. You just need to get stuck in. So whenever people ask me, how do I start using AI? I'm just like, just start using AI. That's going to be the way, and you will learn what it's good at. You learn what it's not good at, which is more important. And then you'll work out how you can fit it into everyday life. But that comes from experimentation. And it seemed from this Danish study, like with a little bit of training, the men were like, okay, cool, and just got on with it. Whereas the women were asking for more training, which was not provided. So the fix here is probably additional training. And then evidence of systemic sexism in AI. Yeah, that's fair. It's trained on the internet, which is already a bit sexist. And there will be financial consequences of biased AI, given how AI is predicted to boost global economies. In the US alone, a persistent 25% usage gap could translate into hundreds of billions of dollars in lost productivity, the paper's authors wrote. So this is kind of the second or third order consequence of this. If we have a gap in usage now, so who is using it, then we're going to get a gap in productivity. So the people who are using it, who predominantly are male at the moment, will get increased productivity, and then we will get a gap in incomes, wages, and an economic gap that will start to open up as well. So we have to think a few steps ahead to see how this is going to impact us, and that is the likely consequence, which is why it is so important. I'm a huge supporter of content creators, female content creators, who are talking to other women and saying, hey guys, we need to get on this. Because obviously me saying that is very different coming from a white dude. It comes across as almost like paternalistic and patronizing. It is not my space. It is not I should not be the one telling women what to do. That is a bad look. However, other women in tech, other women who are wonderful coders, fantastic explainers of how this AI works in the education space, I fully support, and I want them to be out there spreading this message so we can close this usage gap, so we can close the potential income gap, and we can close the productivity gap as well. But again, not my space. So I can talk about the numbers and ask the wonderful women out there to educate and help with this, but it's very different coming from me for obvious reasons.